edition of Thunderdome. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and ding that bell. Okay, moving on. So, last time we talked about classical conditioning. Today we are talking about operant conditioning. So this is punishment and reward. Classical conditioning can explain acquisition of many learned behaviors, but not all of them. If you think about your everyday life, we think about operant conditioning a little bit more. The classical conditioning part would be you sitting in class, and then all of a sudden the bell rings, and then you stand up and you move to your next class. That is classical conditioning. Operant conditioning is, I behaved a certain way, and it was followed by a certain circumstance, which would be a rewarding circumstance or a punishing circumstance, and that either increases the likelihood of me behaving that way again, or decreases the likelihood of me behaving that way again. So, if you get a chance, click on this. It is a video of The Big Bang Theory, where Sheldon trains Penny to act in certain ways by punishing her and rewarding her. So, operant conditioning, our definition is the basic learning process that involves changing the probability that a response will be repeated by manipulating the consequences of that response. Okay. So, Edward Thorndike comes up with this thing called the law of effect. So, he's an American psychologist, first to experimentally study animal behavior and document how active behaviors are influenced by their consequences. He came up with the law of effect, and that is a learning principle. The responses followed by a satisfying effect become strengthened and are more likely to reoccur in a particular situation, while responses followed by a dissatisfying effect are weakened and less likely to recur in a particular situation. So he found this out via the puzzle box experiment. So he puts a cat in the box. This is what it actually looked like. So he puts a cat in the box, and it has several different strings. The cat uses trial and error to pull the levers. One of the levers lets the cat escape. Cats get better at escaping, and they're driven by the food reward outside of the box. So they want to get out of the box to get the food. So they start manipulating the strings. They find out that if I do pull a certain string, then I get out and I get my reward. Pretty satisfying consequence at the end of it. You get to eat. So he found this out, and it held pretty true. So true that later on this guy named B.F. Skinner, who looks like he's going to take over the world, okay? American psychologist who developed the operant conditioning model of learning. So he really comes up with this whole thing for us. He emphasized studying the relationship between environmental factors and observable actions. He is a behaviorist. He does not care about what's happening in your mind because he couldn't watch that. Now, can we watch that these days? Yes, we can. Brain scans allow us to do stuff like that. But he couldn't do it. So, he's trying to achieve a scientific explanation of behavior. He comes up with the term operant, which is an actively omitted, and he would never say this, voluntary behavior that operates in the environment to produce consequences. So, studying equals better grades on a test. Studying is the operant. If you want this to happen, what can you do in the environment to increase the likelihood of that happening? Studying. Okay, so again, studying is the operant because it is the behavior that allows us to produce a particular consequence. In everyday language, Skinner's principles of operant conditioning explain how we acquire the wide range of voluntary behaviors that we perform in daily life. But as a behaviorist who rejected mentalistic explanations, Skinner avoided the term voluntary because it would imply the behavior was due to a conscious choice or intention. B.F. Skinner believes you've never made a choice in your entire life. He believes that everything that's ever happened to you and every behavior that you have exuded because of those circumstances has affected the situation that you are in currently. Again, you know, one of the best examples I could give you is what's happening right now. Everything ever in my entire life that has happened to me has led me up to this point and now facilitated the words that are coming out of my mouth at this time. I didn't choose to say these words, according to B.F. Skinner. Everything that has ever happened to me is now making me say the words that are coming out of my mouth. Doesn't that kind of stink? Yes. But again, believing that we have choice and free will keeps a lot of people sane. So Skinner defined operant conditioning concepts in very objective terms, and he avoided explanations based on subjective mental states. So he was only about objective, observable behaviors. So, reinforcement. Reinforcement pretty much says reinforcement will allow us to increase the likelihood of a behavior happening again. All right, so the occurrence of a stimulus or event following a response that increases the likelihood of the response being repeated. Types of reinforcement stimuli, reinforcers. We have primary reinforcers. So a stimulus or event that is naturally or inherently reinforcing for a given species, such as food, water, other biological necessities. You can imagine Maslow's bottom part of his pyramid, the hierarchy of needs. That's primary reinforcers. So we got food, sleep, sex, water, air. A conditioned reinforcer is anything, a stimulus or event, that has acquired reinforcing value by being associated with the primary reinforcer, also called a secondary reinforcer. So it'd be money, awards, praise, grades, success, power. These things become classically conditioned with these things. And then we end up going after these because it gets us what we need. Now, not necessarily air. Water these days, yeah, kind of. Sex, sleep, food. I mean, if you get these things, it becomes a lot easier. Okay. Positive reinforcement. So this is where I tell you right now that positive doesn't mean good. Positive means addition. Okay? So in psychology, you're going to see that a lot. So here we go. Positive reinforcement. A situation in which a response is followed by the addition of a reinforcing stimulus, increasing the likelihood that the response will be repeated in similar situations. Your backhand return of the tennis ball, the operant, what you do in the environment, is low and fast, and your tennis coach yells, "Excellent!" And that praise happens to be a reinforcing stimulus. That praise is like, ooh, I did well. I heard somebody praise me. I will now continue to be low and fast with my backhand. You watch a student production of Hamlet and write a short paper about it. That's the operant. For 10 bonus points, the reinforcing stimulus in your literature class. That's pretty easy to understand, I think. Or you reach your sales quota at work, the operant, and you get a bonus check, the reinforcing stimulus. This doesn't happen in teaching very often. For AP teachers, on most years, you do get $50 per student who makes a 3 or above. It's really nice. It's not happening this year, sadly. But let's take it to another level, okay? So let's say you're a beer and wine sales rep, and you're in Wilmington. And you get a salary, and that salary comes out to be about $32,000 a year. But you also get your bonuses every single month if you hit a certain quota of sales. A lot of people in Wilmington Wilmington is a restaurant town, a bar town, and there's a lot of them in Wilmington. And when you're a beer and wine sales rep, you go around and you sell as much as you can from your company. Some people have goals of $50,000. Some people have goals of $75,000 of beer and wine sold per month. If you hit that, you'll get 3% of what you sold. That ends up being quite a bit sometimes. And it's more incentive to reach those goals, which helps the company, and then all of a sudden, you're getting paid more because you're working harder. That's how it works. That's how the quota bonus system works. Negative reinforcement. Now, is this bad? No, it's not. It's not bad or good. Negative reinforcement is taking something away to increase the likelihood of that behavior happening again. So, negative reinforcement is a situation in which a response results in the removal of, avoidance of, or escape from a punishing stimulus, increasing the likelihood that the response will be repeated in similar situations. Examples: taking 2 aspirin, the operant, what you did in the environment, to remove a headache, the aversive stimuli. You don't want it. You want to avoid it. That's what aversive means. 30 minutes later, the headache is gone. I do this all the time. If I feel like I'm getting a headache, I take medicine and then it's gone before I even get it. Avoidance behavior. You make backup copies of important computer files, the operant, what you did in the environment, to avoid losing the data if the computer's hard drive should fail, the aversive stimulus. So you want to avoid that. You don't want it to happen, so you make backups. I mean, who gets the notifications on their phone, all the time? You haven't backed up your phone in 13 weeks. I hate those. But I never back it up. I don't know why. And I'm not a cloud guy. Okay, so that's known as avoidance behavior. You dab some hydrocortisone cream on an insect bite, the operant, to escape the itching, the aversive stimuli. This is known as escape behavior. You actually have this thing happening to you actively, and then you do something to escape that whatever feeling or whatever it is that is created by that stimulus. This is known as escape behavior. You get a flu shot, the operant, in November to avoid catching the flu, the aversive stimulus. Another example of negative reinforcement is this. One of my favorite examples I ever give. Mom's whipping the minivan. All right, you're in the back seat. Miley Cyrus comes on. You don't like Miley Cyrus, right? It's Party in the USA. It's playing. Your mom's up there singing it because she's like that. And you say, "Mom, turn this off. I can't stand this." And your mom turns around and says, "You want to rephrase that?" "Mom, will you please turn off Miley Cyrus? I don't really like this song." And mom says, "Thank you." And she turns it off. What behavior is being increased by taking Miley Cyrus away? Saying please. Being polite. Using the correct tone. Simple. Enhancing the effectiveness of positive reinforcement. So make sure that the reinforcer is strongly reinforcing to the individual whose behavior you are trying to modify. Let's say if you have a crazy gluten allergy and you're trying to get somebody to do something, don't give them a chocolate chip cookie, right? You'd be like, okay, I'm never doing that again. You wouldn't be reinforcing it, you'd be the opposite. The positive reinforcer should be delivered immediately after the preferred behavior occurs. That's important because if time passes, then you would forget what the behavior was that you were getting rewarded for. All right? The positive reinforcer should initially be given every time the preferred behavior occurs. When the desired behavior is well established, gradually reduce the frequency of reinforcement. We're going to talk about this a lot next part. But there are schedules of reinforcement that truly work and schedules of reinforcement that do not. If you get reinforced every single time that you do a certain thing, it will lose its value. If you get reinforced and you don't know when that's coming, it won't lose its value. Use a variety of positive reinforcers such as tangible items, praise, special privileges, recognition, and so on. Minimize the use of food as a positive reinforcer. Capitalize on what's known as the PREMAC principle. So elementary school teachers use this all the time. Use a more preferred activity, painting, to reinforce a less preferred activity, picking up toys. Example here would be, all right, I want you to learn your times tables. We're in elementary school, it's 3rd grade, but your class or the class as a whole is being rowdy and they're not really paying attention to what's going on. And you say, I'm going to let you go outside and we're going to have recess on the promise that when we come back in here, we're going to sit down and we're going to work hard on our times table. That's the PREMAC principle. It's used all the time by parents, teachers, anybody dealing with kids. Encourage the individual to engage in self-reinforcement in the form of pride. Holy crap. Can pride actually increase behaviors in a human? A feeling that we can create, an emotion that we can create within ourselves, can it increase our ability to behave certain ways? Yeah, it can. Pride isn't necessarily a harmful thing. You know, some people can be too prideful, I guess. But all right, comparing positive and negative reinforcement. Check this out on your own time. It's just the examples whenever it comes to making the dean's list in college, which is not really explained to a lot of people until you get there. But yeah, it's if you look here on your own time, you can find what it takes to make the dean's list. It's actually not that hard, but a lot of people fail to realize that they even made it because you just don't know. All right, punishment. The presentation of a stimulus or event following a behavior that acts to decrease the likelihood of behaviors being repeated. Physical punishment is probably the most common thought about whenever you think about punishment. So getting a spanking or maybe something like that. Now, I don't think that happens quite often as it did before, but now people get grounded, right? They get their privileges taken away. And we'll look at that. So, punishment by application, also known as positive punishment, a situation in which an operant is followed by the presentation or addition of an aversive stimulus. An employee wears jeans to work. What that employee did in the environment, the operant, and is reprimanded by a supervisor for dressing inappropriately, the punishing stimuli. All it was, or all it is the voice of the supervisor saying, what are you doing? It's not Friday. You can't wear jeans. And then that hits hard. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I was reprimanded. I'm not going to do that ever again. Your dog jumps on a visitor, the operant, and you smack him with a rolled up newspaper. Poor Doji. And that's the punishment stimulus. So, the dog learns that if he jumps up, he gets punished physically. And to avoid the physical punishment, he won't jump up anymore. You make a comment, the operant, in your work group meetings, and a coworker responds with a sarcastic remark, the punishing stimulus. Ooh, maybe you've had friends like that. You know, I've definitely coached teams like that, where it doesn't matter what a player did, their teammates would sarcastically respond to their behavior or whatever they said, and what it would do, it would drive the player who made the remark to not make any more remarks. And I think that happens in friendship groups a lot. So you make a comment, the operant, in a work group meeting, friendship group, and a coworker / friend responds with a sarcastic remark. Well, I'm just not going to talk around you anymore if you're going to make some sarcastic remark after everything I say. Punishment by removal. Negative punishment. This is not bad. It is punishment by removal. A situation in which an operant is followed by the removal or subtraction of a reinforcing stimulus. It's also called negative punishment. So, after she buys stock, the operant, in a hot new startup company The company fails and the investor loses all of her money. Loss of reinforcing stimulus, less of the behavior of buying stock. Because she was flirting with another man, the operant, a girl gets dumped by her boyfriend. Loss of reinforcing stimulus. It's like this little text message right here. Hi, Jared. Heart. I told James that I was sick and couldn't go out tonight. Or go out. Lol. Are you ready for tonight? Question mark, smiley face. OMG, how stupid. Yes, I am, babe. Heart. Can't wait to have you in my bed. I know, right? Lol, lol, lol. And me too. I want you so bad. I'll break up with James next week. I promise. Don't worry, hon. I'll do it for you. By the way, this is James, and we're over. Got him. Love this. You know, but that's exactly what happened, right? Flirting with another man, the operant girl gets dumped by her boyfriend, loss of reinforcing stimulus, done. Next time we talk, on part 3, I'll teach you how to properly break up with somebody. So, even when punishment works, its use has several drawbacks. Punishment may decrease a specific response, but it doesn't necessarily teach or promote a more appropriate response to take its place. This is that moment where you tell your parents or your guardians or whoever punishment doesn't work. And you can say, Coach V said so. All right? Punishment that is intense may produce undesirable results such as complete passivity, fear, anxiety, or hostility. There's a thing and a term called learned helplessness, where you just learn to take things and you're like, oh, well, I guess this is a part of life. I'm just going to get punished forever. And the effects of punishment are likely to be temporary. In saying all this, how do you do it? How do you not punish somebody? You actually reinforce. You actually find the correct behavior, and then you reinforce that behavior. You don't punish necessarily. You could, and it will work, but again, it might be temporary. So, alternatives to punishment. Strategy 1, reinforce an alternative behavior that is constructive and incompatible. If you're trying to decrease a child's whining, respond to her request. The reinforcer only when she talks in a normal tone of voice. I've done this plenty of times. I've told my son, I'm only going to talk to you when you talk to me like a big boy. Dad, and I say, talk to me like a big boy and you might get what you want. And then all of a sudden he does. Strategy 2, stop reinforcing the problem behavior. Eliminating the reinforcer, extinction, acting uninterested to stop gossip at work. Okay.